Okay, last one, we're looking at domain and range of inverse functions. So just a reminder, the domain is the set of all x values and range is the set of all y values. So we're going to be looking at graphs, and for domain, you're going to need to look at the x-axis, and for range, you're going to be looking at the y-axis. Okay, and we're going to write our answers in interval notation. So the one confusion with interval notations is it's not points, it's an interval. Okay, so we take the smallest value, comma, largest value, and then sometimes we use brackets, sometimes we use parentheses. So we use brackets for points that are included on the graph. So that's usually like a closed dot or something that continues through. If it were right here, we would use brackets. So parentheses are not included, and that's an open dot, or if it's just a graph that just starts with a line. And we'll see an example of that. We also use parentheses, oops, I need to fix that spelling, for positive and negative infinity. So like if an interval has negative infinity, positive infinity, we use parentheses on those sides, and then you don't put a plus in front of the positive infinity. It's just infinity. So for domain and range, a little preview, we have a parabola that opens up and opens down. When we find domain and range, we kind of box it in. So if I'm looking for the domain, that's the x values, and I'm looking at the x-axis, so right here. So I'm asking myself, how far left does the graph go and how far right does the graph go? So left, right, it goes on forever. Right? So we say forever when a graph never stops. That's when we use our infinities. So go back down to the x-axis. It's going to go from negative infinity to positive infinity. And every time you have a parabola, that is the domain. See right here, it goes left forever, right forever. So this one, the domain, is negative infinity, positive infinity. So our range is y values. So that's when we're going to go bottom to top. So I'm going to find the bottom of the graph and find the y value. So that's y equals -2. That's our bottom point. And see how there's not an open dot, it's just continuing on the graph. That means it's included and there's a bracket. The top of the graph goes forever. So remember, forever means infinity. So it's going to go on the y-axis from -2 to infinity. Okay, so one thing I want you to add in this note, in your notes, remember when we have inverses, x and y switch. So we also have the domain and range also switch. So for this graph, I don't even know what the inverse graph looks like, but I know the domain is the same as the range of the original function. And I know the range is the domain of the original function. So here I just found the domain. That means on the inverse, this is the range. The range is negative infinity to infinity. So if I want to find the domain of the inverse, I need to find the range of the original function. So again, remember the range is the y values, and we go from bottom to top of the graph. So the bottom of the graph, it goes down forever and ever and ever. And on the y-axis, that's negative infinity. So our bottom value is at the bottom, negative infinity. And it ends right here. That's the top of the graph at y equals 1. And it's included. It's just a line through the graph. So this would be the domain of the inverse. So they switch spots. Once you find domain and range of the original, you know the domain and range of the inverse.